Okay, so you guys really sent us down a fascinating rabbit hole this time.
Yeah.
With all this stuff about hair.
Really interesting stuff.
But not just hair, right? Like hair and how it connects to...
Oh, yeah. All these like ideas about race.
Exactly. Yeah. And then...
Huge topic.
It is a huge topic.
It's complicated.
And then you layered on top of that,
Yeah.
like transracialism.
Oh, man. Yeah. Where do you even begin with
I
that?
know, right? But that's what we're here for.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we're going to deep dive into this.
We've got so many sources, too.
I know we've got like YouTube videos and Wikipedia articles and even some like academic papers.
Some really intense Reddit threads, too.
Oh, yeah. Those are always interesting.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's break down like what we're trying to do here.
Okay.
We want to understand first, like, what is hair?
Right back to basics.
Yeah, just like biologically, what are we talking about?
The science of it.
Then we're going to look at how hair has been used like historically.
Throughout history.
Yeah, to like categorize people into different races.
Yeah. Which is a whole other can of worms.
It is. And then we'll explore how all of this connects to this idea of transracialism.
Which is definitely a hot topic these days.
Yeah, and it's like so complex.
It is.
But I think there are some really interesting parallels to the whole transgender conversation.
Oh, for sure. Like, there are definitely some comparisons there.
Yeah. So, okay, one of the things that jumped out at me right away is this idea that race, like as much as we talk about it,
Right. It's like this huge thing in society.
it doesn't really have this solid biological basis.
Like, you'd think it would be straightforward,
Yeah.
but it's not.
Like, you see these old documentaries where they're trying to like categorize people.
Oh, yeah, with the calipers and measuring skulls and stuff.
And it just seems so
Bizarre.
bizarre, right?
Yeah.
Like so outdated.
Totally.
So let's start with hair itself.
Oh.
What is it like from a scientific perspective?
Okay, so the Wikipedia article on hair is actually a pretty good starting point. It says that hair is part of what's called the integumentary system.
The what?
Integumentary system.
Okay.
It's basically the outer layer of the body that protects us.
So like our skin,
It's again,
nails,
yeah.
hair, it all goes together.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Interesting.
Now, what's fascinating is that while hair is this like basic biological thing,
Right.
different cultures and time periods have like totally different attitudes towards it.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, like, think about how hairstyles can be tied to religion.
Oh, yeah. Like certain religions have specific rules about hair.
Exactly. And then there's how hair can signal someone's age or gender.
Right. Like you think about like long hair being associated with femininity.
Or like gray hair being associated with wisdom and old age.
Yeah. Or even like certain hairstyles being popular among different age groups.
Totally. It's like hair can tell us a lot about a person just by looking at it.
That's so interesting.
And then there's the whole biology of hair itself.
Right. Like the different textures.
Yeah, the Wikipedia page breaks it down into 4 main types based on curl pattern.
Okay. I'm ready for this.
All right, so type 1 is straight hair.
The most basic.
Yeah, it's smooth, usually has lots of shine because the oils can coat the whole strand easily.
Oh, that makes sense.
Pretty resilient,
Yeah.
not easy to curl. And it can get oily quickly because of that efficient oil distribution.
So like straight shot for the oil to travel down.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Then we move on to type 2, which is wavy hair.
Okay, so it's starting to get a little curvy.
Yeah, it's that middle ground between straight and curly.
Right.
Usually has more frizz than straight hair.
Oh, I can see that.
And within type 2, there are different degrees of waviness.
Oh, interesting.
Some are easy to straighten or curl, while others are a bit more stubborn.
So it's like a spectrum even within the wavy category.
Exactly.
Okay, what about like actual curls?
All right, so type 3 is where we see those distinct curls.
Okay.
Typically, they're S-shaped,
Okay.
and they can range from loose curls to really tight coils. How defined they are depends a lot on how the hair is treated.
I bet.
Without proper care, these curls can lose definition and get frizzy.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that.
And finally, we have type 4 hair.
Okay. The tightest curls.
Yeah, often described as kinky or coily hair.
Okay.
Very tight curl pattern. Sometimes so tight it might not even look like it has curls at all.
Wow.
Individual strands are often quite fragile. The hair has a high density,
Really?
and it shrinks a lot when it gets wet.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it also has fewer outer protective layers, so it can be more prone to damage.
So it's like the most delicate hair type.
In some ways, yes.
Wow. Okay, so we've got this whole spectrum of hair textures.
Whole range.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy? Like back in the day,
Oh, yeah, historically.
yeah, these differences in hair texture were like a major part of how people were categorized into races.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like it's so weird to think about now.
It is.
But there's this YouTube video from the New York Times.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one.
about these like bizarre 1960s racial classifications.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's like these scientists were trying to be so scientific about it.
Right, with their charts and measurements.
Yeah, and like looking back, it's just so outdated and like kind of offensive.
Yeah, totally.
Like there's this one part where the speaker is talking about how they feel like a mix of everything.
Right, like they don't fit into any of these neat boxes.
Exactly. And that's the thing, right? Like people are so diverse. And these old attempts at categorization just feel
artificial.
Yeah, like they don't capture the complexity of human variation at all.
No, they don't.
And I think it's important to understand the historical context here.
Yeah, sure.
Like according to the Wikipedia article on race.
Human categorization.
Yeah. That
topic.
It is big topic.
Yeah.
It says that like over centuries, these ideas about group differences.
That were based on folklore and stuff.
Yeah, like just like, people's beliefs.
Just made up stuff.
Yeah, pretty much. They got all mixed up with what people were claiming were scientific explanations.
Right, like they tried to make it sound all official and legitimate.
Yeah, and that led to this thing called the ideology of race.
Oh, yeah. I remember reading about that.
So what does that actually mean, like ideology of race?
So basically it's this idea that races are like these ancient, unchanging things.
Like they've always existed.
Exactly. And that they're like fundamentally different from each other.
Oh, so it's not just about acknowledging that people look different.
No, it goes way beyond that.
Okay.
It's about saying that these differences are like deep down in our biology.
Oh, so it's like trying to justify the idea that some races are better than others.
Exactly. And you know what's crazy?
What?
Like physical traits, like hair texture.
Along with skin color and stuff?
Yeah, all that stuff became like key evidence in this whole ideology of race.
Oh, wow. So it's like they were using these physical features to like reinforce these made up ideas about racial superiority.
Pretty much.
That's messed up.
It is.
So hair wasn't just like this neutral thing. It was like actively being used to support these like constructed ideas about race.
Exactly.
It's wild.
It is.
So thankfully, our understanding of race today is like way different.
Oh yeah, thank goodness.
Like the idea that race is primarily a social construct is pretty much accepted now, right?
Yeah, for the most part.
Like we understand that it's not really this like fixed biological thing.
Right. It's more about how societies categorize people.
And how we treat people based on those categories.
Exactly. Like the social and cultural meanings we attach to these categories.
Yeah, and the Wikipedia article on ethnicity actually talks about this shift.
Oh, yeah. It's a good overview.
Yeah, it explains how in the 20th century, the dominant view of race started to move away from these, like, what are they called? Primordialist ideas?
Yeah, primordialist.
Which is like the belief that racial groups are like ancient and unchanging.
Right, like they've always been this way.
Exactly. And instead, people started to realize that identity is much more fluid.
And shaped by social factors.
Yeah, and like the science backs this up too, right?
Absolutely.
Like you've got the Human Genome Project.
Huge undertaking.
I know, right? And they found that there's actually more genetic variation within so-called racial groups
than between them.
Yeah, which like blows the whole idea of like biologically distinct races out of the water.
Totally. Like it just shows how much more alike we are than different.
Yeah, and there's this document called RCTA.
Understanding RCTA.
Yes, that
talks about this too.
Yeah, and it really challenges this idea of someone being able to biologically change their race.
Which is a whole other conversation.
It is.
But yeah, like from a scientific perspective, it just doesn't really make sense.
Right, like our genes are just way more interconnected than these old racial categories would have us believe.
Yeah, like we're all way more mixed up than we think.
And you know what's also interesting? There's this Simon Cushing YouTube video about theories of racism.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one.
And he makes this really interesting point, that racism itself is not like an inherent human trait.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's learned.
Like it's taught.
Right, and he talks about how historically people identified more with their tribal or national affiliations.
Rather than these like broad racial classifications that we use today.
Exactly, like these modern racial categories are actually a pretty recent invention.
Yeah, true.
Like for most of human history, people just didn't think about themselves in these terms.
It was more about your immediate community and your kinship ties.
So if race is largely this social construct that we've created...
It seems like it is.
Yeah, then where does hair fit into all of this?
That's a great question.
Like, it's still a really visible marker, right?
Absolutely.
Like, even though we know that race isn't this, like, fixed biological thing...
Right.
Hair texture is still one of the first things people notice about each other.
Yeah, and it can still lead to assumptions and stereotypes.
Oh, for sure.
Like consciously or unconsciously, people still make judgments about others based on their hair.
Yeah, like, you see someone with like really curly hair.
And you might automatically assume they're of a certain race.
Right. And those assumptions can be really inaccurate.
And harmful.
Yeah, for sure.
Like hair carry a lot of social weight and historical baggage.
Yeah, it's not just about aesthetic.
No, it's way more than that.
And this brings us to like the really complicated issue of transracialism.
Oh, yeah. Buckle up for this one.
I know, right?
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, and controversial.
Definitely.
But I think it's important to talk about it.
Absolutely.
So there's this Simon Cushing YouTube video.
The one we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that one.
That one.
And he goes into this whole debate about transracialism.
Oh, yeah. And he lays out like a spectrum of different viewpoints.
I love how he does that.
It's helpful.
Yeah, so like on one end, you've got the conservative view.
Which is like, you can't change your sex and you can't change your race.
Right, like both are fixed and immutable.
Exactly.
And then there's like the radical view.
Which is like, both are changeable.
Yeah, like you can choose your gender and your race.
Which is a pretty extreme stance.
It is.
Yeah.
But then there's like this middle ground.
The more moderate view.
Yeah,
Right.
where people accept transgender identity.
But reject transracial identity.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of the debate is happening right now.
Yeah. That's the hot topic.
So what's the reasoning behind that?
Like, why accept one and not the other?
Yeah,
Well, it gets tricky.
I bet.
Some people argue that race is like fundamentally different from gender.
Oh, how so?
They say that race is tied to like ancestry and shared history.
And culture.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Okay.
And that you can't just choose to be a different race.
It's because you don't have that shared experience.
Right.
But then, the critics of this view point out that, like, if you're going to argue that transracialism is impossible, then, like, what about transgenderists?
Like the same logic could be applied there.
Yeah, like, if you're saying that you can't change your race because it's tied to your biology.
Then why are you saying that people can change their gender?
When that's also tied to biology.
Yeah, it's like a double standard.
It is, and it's a really tricky argument to navigate.
It is.
And then you have these comparisons popping up between, like, woman face
Okay.
and, like, male to female transition.
So like saying that they're both forms of appropriation?
Yeah, and some people even draw parallels to J.K. Rowling.
Oh, right. Like with her views on both transgender and transracial identity.
Yeah, this whole messy debate.
It is.
Oh, no.
And then there's the whole issue of white privilege.
Which is huge.
Too.
Like, especially in the context of transracialism.
Yeah, the Rachel Dolezal case is like the classic example.
Oh, yeah, she's like the poster child for this whole debate.
And the argument is that like for a white person to claim a non-white racial identity,
Especially a black identity.
yeah, it's like a form of privilege.
Yeah, because they're able to, like, shed the advantages of being white.
Right. Which is something that people of color can't do. Like they can't just choose to not experience racism.
Yeah, and the Cushing video talks about this.
It does?
It mentions how, like, historically there have been cases of people who are ancestrally black.
Passing as white.
Right. But that was often done as a means of survival.
Or to access opportunities that were denied to them because of their race.
So it's like a completely different situation.
Totally.
Yeah, it's not about, like, choosing to be white because it's trendy.
No, it's about like literally trying to stay alive.
Exactly. And then there's this other YouTube video from Dr. Todd Grande.
Oh yeah, he's a psychologist.
Yeah, and he offers, like, a different way of thinking about transracialism.
Okay, thank you.
So he says that, like, if transgender identity comes from this deep internal sense of gender incongruence.
With one's assigned sex.
Right. Okay.
Then like the same logic could potentially apply to transracial identity.
So, like, feeling a deep connection to a different race than the one you were assigned at birth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And wanting to live your life as that race.
That's interesting. It is interesting, you're right.
Interesting.
But he does acknowledge that, like, there's this whole issue of deception.
Which is a big problem.
Yeah, like with Rachel Dolezal, for example.
Right. She was accused of like lying about her race.
Which undermines her whole argument.
It does.
So it's like, how do you prove that your transracial identity is genuine?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question.
Right. And it's not like there's a medical test for it. So
Right.
it all comes down to, like, self-identification.
And how much weight we give to that.
And whether we're willing to believe people when they say they feel like they belong to a different race.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It is.
It really is.
And then, there's this concept of racial dysphoria,
Okay.
which I found really interesting.
Tell me more.
So there are these Reddit excerpts from, like, the Ask Trans Race community.
Oh,
And these people are describing, like, this profound feeling of being the wrong race.
Wow.
Yeah, and they talk about like experiencing distress and envy and this strong desire to transition racially.
That's heavy stuff.
It is heavy stuff.
Yeah.
But they're also talking about how they face so much skepticism and rejection from society.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's like people don't even want to acknowledge their feelings.
Which must be so isolating.
I know.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, these feelings they're describing, they echo a lot of the experiences that transgender people report.
Oh, yeah, with gender dysphoria.
Exactly, this disconnect between your internal sense of self and your external reality.
And the desire to align the two.
Yeah, and that desire is like a common thread in both transracial and transgender conversations.
Totally.
So then there's this other YouTube video.
Okay.
It's called In Defense of Transracialism /RCTA.
Oh, yeah, I think I saw that one.
And they talk about how there are these online communities and social media trends around transracialism.
Which makes sense. Like, the internet can be a space for people to connect and share their experiences.
Yeah, and especially for people who feel marginalized.
Absolutely.
Like they might find it easier to express themselves online. Yeah, where they don't have to worry about judgment or discrimination.
Right. But the video also cautions against like problematic examples of transracialism.
Like Oli London.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. He's like a whole other story.
Yeah, his actions were widely seen as mockery.
And offensive.
Yeah. And the video points out this challenge with transracial transitions
Okay.
compared to transgender transitions.
Like the lack of a clear before and after.
Yeah, because with transgender transitions, there are often like medical interventions,
Right. Like hormone therapy and surgery.
which can result in like significant physical changes.
Yeah.
But with transracial transitions,
The ability to alter racial phenotypes is much more limited,
right, so it's harder to like pass as another race.
especially in the same way that a transgender person might pass as their identified gender,
And it often relies on like surface level changes
like changing your hair or your style of dress.
or using makeup.
Yeah. But those changes can only go so far,
Yeah, and they can be seen as like appropriative.
which is a whole other issue.
It is.
Definitely.
And then there's this thesis on transracialism
Okay.
by a trans Japanese woman.
Wow.
And she makes the argument that both transracial and transgender identities can feel equally fixed and unchanging.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And she draws on her own experience as a transgender person.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. To say that, like, for the individual experiencing it,
Uh-huh.
it feels just as real and authentic.
Whether it's gender or race.
Exactly. And she also talks about how, like, even though there might be elements of cultural escapism,
Okay.
we shouldn't try to forcibly reverse someone's transracial identity.
Like that would be harmful,
Right. She compares it to like conversion therapy.
which is widely discredited.
And she's saying that like you can't force someone to be a different race
Okay, Jen.
than what they feel inside.
Right, like that's just going to cause more harm than good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay, we've talked about like all these different aspects of
And
transracialism.
a lot to unpack.
It is.
Yeah.
But how does hair specifically fit into all of this?
Well, hair has always played a role in racial classification.
Right. Like historically.
Yeah, and even today.
So it's like this visible marker that people use to make assumptions about race.
Yeah, and for someone who identifies as transracial, changing their hair can be a way of like outwardly expressing their identified race.
So like aligning their appearance with how they feel inside.
Exactly, like it's a form of self-expression.
Yeah, and there are these Reddit excerpts
Okay,
from the diracial community of Reddit,
interesting.
and people are talking about like dyeing their hair.
Or getting certain hairstyle.
Yeah, and using makeup to like feel more in alignment with their racial identity.
And they say that it makes them feel happier.
Yeah, like when their appearance matches their internal sense of self.
Yeah, it can be really validating.
So it's like a way of like making the outside match the inside.
Yeah, and it raises this interesting question.
Okay, what's that?
Could these changes in hair be seen as like analogous to some aspects of a transgender person's transition?
Oh, that's a good point.
Like, obviously, it's not a perfect comparison,
Right.
but the underlying motivation is kind of similar.
Yeah, like the desire to align your external presentation with your internal identity.
Exactly, and I think that's worth considering.
I agree.
Yeah.
But we also have to be mindful of the ethical implications.
Oh, for sure.
Like especially around cultural appropriation.
That was huge.
There's this document called Understanding RCTA,
Okay.
and it talks about the importance of respecting the cultural significance of hair.
Within different racial groups.
Yeah, and making sure that you're not just like adopting these markers without understanding their meaning.
And their history.
Yeah, because hair is not just about aesthetics.
No, it's about identity.
And culture and
belonging.
And like, you know, the whole debate around transracialism is really about like challenging these fixed categories.
Yeah, like pushing the boundaries of how we define race.
But then there's this other side of it where people are saying that like, you can't just choose your race.
Right. Like it's not that simple.
No. Yeah, and there's this excerpt from philarchive.org.
Interesting.
That talks about how society understands racial membership.
Okay.
And it says that ancestry is like a crucial marker.
Because of this thing called intersubjective agreement.
Intersubjective agreement.
Yeah, it's like a fancy way of saying that people generally agree on what makes someone a certain race.
Oh, so it's like a social contract.
Pretty much.
And the argument is that individuals can't just like change the rules of the game.
Right, like you can't just decide to be a different race because you feel like it.
Because society has these like pre-existing ideas about what race means.
Exactly.
But then the excerpt also points out that with transgenderism, like even though you can't change your chromosomes, social transitions are becoming more accepted.
Yeah, like people are starting to recognize that gender identity is not just about biology.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, could we see a similar shift with transracial identity?
Like even without any biological changes.
Yeah, like could society come to accept transracial identities in the same way that we're starting to accept transgender identities?
That's the big question.
Yeah, it's a big question.
And there's no easy answer.
No, there's not.
But it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, and there's this PDF by Rogers Brubaker.
Oh, yeah, I've read some of his work.
And he's like a sociologist.
Yeah, he's done a lot of work on identity.
And he frames this whole comparison between transgender and transracial identity as like an intellectual opportunity.
Ah, it's interesting.
Yeah, to like think about the fluidity of identity more broadly.
Okay.
And he introduces these concepts like trans of migration.
Trans of between.
Trans of beyond.
Sounds complicated.
It is a little bit.
Yeah.
But basically he's trying to get us to think about like movement and identification.
Across different categories?
Yeah, like not just gender and race.
Like other aspects of identity too.
Like class and nationality and religion.
All that stuff.
Yeah, and he notes that like there's this interesting difference in how people react to these ideas.
Oh yeah, like people are generally more accepting of gender self-determination.
And racial self-determination.
Yeah, like we're okay with people choosing their gender.
But not so much their race.
It's strange, right?
It is strange.
Yeah.
And he thinks that this difference might have to do with like how these claims are understood in relation to social justice.
Oh.
Like transgender claims are often framed within the context of like addressing exclusion and oppression.
Right, like they align with civil rights movement.
Exactly. And claims of choosing or changing racial identity.
They're harder to frame in that way.
Yeah. And they can be seen as like undermining the struggles against racial inequality.
Which is a valid concern.
It is.
Yeah.
And Brubaker also makes this like really powerful point by quoting this phrase.
Okay.
Michael Brown couldn't be transracial.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he's highlighting the fact that like racial identity is not just about how you feel inside.
Right. It's about your lived experience.
And like the systemic racism and discrimination that you face.
Which is something that white people don't have to deal with.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction.
And finally, Brubaker talks about how racial identity is often policed within communities.
Oh, yeah, like the whole acting white thing.
Exactly. Like there are all these expectations about how you're supposed to behave if you're Black.
Or Asian or Latino.
Yeah. And if you don't conform to those expectations.
You could be accused of like not being authentically Black.
Or whatever your race is.
Right. And that just shows how complex racial identity really is.
It's not just about how you see yourself.
Yeah.
It's also about how others see you.
And how you navigate those expectations.
Exactly.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Like from the biology of hair.
To the social construction of race.
To the complexities of transracialism.
It's been a journey.
It has.
Yeah.
And I think one of the key takeaways for me is that identity is like way more fluid and multifaceted than we often think.
Absolutely.
Like our understanding of race and belonging is constantly evolving.
Yeah, like what we consider to be true about race today might be completely different in the future.
Right, and that leaves us with this final thought.
Okay, hit me.
Like, given everything we've learned about the social construction of race
and the growing understanding of gender fluidity,
what does the future hold for how we understand and navigate racial identity?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah. And what role will hair play in that evolution?
Because hair is still this like really powerful symbol
It is.
of race and identity,
Yeah. And it's something that we all have to grapple with.
no matter who we are.
Yeah. So I think it's a conversation that we need to keep having.
Definitely.
And hopefully we can move towards a more inclusive and understanding society.
I hope so.
Me too.
Yeah.
So that's it for this deep dive.
Wow, that was a lot,
It was a lot.
but good stuff.
Yeah. Really fascinating.
Yeah.
All right. Until next time.